music by Into Oblivion. Check them out on linktree.com.
Hey, this is the Happy Crow with the Whosoever Group podcast, and I'm joined here with.
Storm Whistler.
Always have that long delay between, but we'll work around it. So, today we're talking something a little different. We're talking about the Great Reset. It has two parts to it. Number one is how the world wants to do the Great Reset, and the second part of that is how we need to do the Great Reset as Christians. One bit of feedback I got from last week's episode, they wanted a little more time with the Bible. Trust me, you're going to get that this week. All right, so let's get into this. What is the Great Reset? The World Economic Forum has talked about it, and they're talking about, and there's along with multiple global leaders talking about taking the world's money, eliminating debt, and also trying to fix a lot of things in society through more or less monetary means. This is an oversimplification of it, and it also includes digital currency and things like that. All this has interesting thought points to it, but I think this is a very misled attempt. This attempt is something that we're not really going to be able to fix on our own. There's things we can fix, yes, but I think we're trying to fix something that we need Jesus to fix. I think we're missing a script on this. There's a very large part of this. So, Storm, what's your thoughts on the Great Reset from the monetary standpoint?
I mean, if anything has shown in this past 9 months with COVID, that we definitely need to start rethinking how we do things. What
Totally agree.
we This is a great time to do a reset on how we spend our money, governmental and corporations, on
Just a quick
where that money
thought.
should go.
Just a
Go
quick
for it.
thought. Stop spending the money. I think that is one of the biggest parts of it. We're spending money we don't have. Obviously, it's not going to work.
Well, I mean, yes, overspending is always a problem. That's I feel like a different subject for a different time. But spending the money that you do have wisely, and putting it into greener initiatives is a great way to make the planet a better place.
I understand with that with the initiatives, but I also think that a lot of these issues stem from the heart to begin with. We have let's take just with the spending in general with even with green initiatives. Why do we have a lot of problems that we have? Because we have greed in our hearts, which is, and now I'm not in any way, shape, or form equivalent capitalism to greed because it is not. That is trying to that's a misframing of capitalism to try to make it into this great evil that's not what it is. Um, but I think that we're trying to fix our own problems with saying, okay, we can fix the world and fix all these different problems. We just spend the money the right way and do this and that. Is why don't we first start with people's hearts and then move outward? Right now, we're willing to throw our time and dollars at these things, and in the World Economic Forum is you have key leaders across the whole world all trying to walk in steps saying we need to do all these different things. But then when you try to bring God into any of that, what happens in normal conversation? Well, that's up to you. That's a very deep personal thing. But yet we can all talk about the money in our pocket, but we can't talk about the God in our heart. That's where I think we're missing with this great reset. We need to reset our hearts to God.
Gotcha. I feel like you'd want to be more of an addition, not necessarily a substitution.
I think let's start there and see where that leads us because this idea of fixing it from a strictly monetary standpoint, going with the globalist standpoint of pulling all the world's money together and doing this or that, that's a great thought and exercise in thought, except if you don't have the heart along with it, it ain't going to work. It's doomed to failure because men's hearts they are what they are. And even in Song of Solomon it says, humanity at its best is nothing but vanity. We we can't do anything without putting ourselves front and center. So unless we put God front and center, trying to do anything else is just it's going to wind up being all about us.
Definitely don't disagree with you on that point. Um, I do think that we need to take initiative and take care of our planet, though. So, but I feel like that's not exactly where you want to go with this podcast or this
Well,
episode.
but the thing is, and all with the taking care of the planet, it's under such insane debate. Let's talk about we like to talk about inequality with things. Yet we want to use green cars, like these batteries and all that are mined from slave trade. So that is just you're going green while someone else is dying. Everything is going to benefit from somebody and also going to disadvantage somebody for the most part. So that in and of itself is once again, if you don't go through the heart on that, you're going to wind up having a nice green energy car, but it was made by slave trade. And then on top of that, you have the fact that the amount of energy it takes to make an electric car from the traveling from one continent to another and doing all that, it's going to be less than that of you buying a domestic car that's a gas guzzler. And if you and like the difference between like a lot of the mines that they use for the what is that lithium that and like different and like and the difference between that and like a fracking place. Now, whether or not you want to get into fracking debate is a whole different subject, but the mines are just terrible, terrible places for people's living conditions, for how they like just have this nice big old gaping hole in the center of the wherever the area is. None of it is the cleanest thing in the world. No matter which way you want to slice it, none of it's the cleanest thing. Closest you're going to get is like wind and solar. It does also use precious minerals, which are wind up a lot of times getting from not the best places. So all of it is from something negative. So how do we're not going to fix all of this, but let's start with
Uh,
the heart.
Gotcha. Going back on a previous point, so you said that I felt like you were kind of generalizing the entire green initiative based off of just a few parties, maybe big parties, but there are a lot of green initiatives that benefit everyone in that situation. And I think the way that we approach construction and infrastructure and trying to build those things in place that are a lot more green. Yes, it may not necessarily be completely neutral zero, but it's better than nothing. And there's a lot of other things that you can do to get you that net zero by planting more trees and doing all this other stuff. So
If I'm remembering correctly, now you can correct me if I'm wrong. If maybe I can try and Google it quick, but I do remember seeing currently on the Earth there are more trees than there ever was in history. I remember
yeah,
reading something about that. So I mean, if it now also we have more exhaust and things getting let
yeah. I was
out,
about to say we've got much
so
more
emissions than before.
CO2. Yeah, much more emissions going out into the planet than ever before. Now there are a lot of companies that are trying to combat that.
And guess
But
what? And with that, guess what? A lot of those companies are funded by the big oil companies. The big oil companies are the main funders of quote unquote green energy, which makes logically absolutely no sense. But okay.
I'm gonna need to hear some examples on that one.
ExxonMobil, the one who loves to throw oil in the ocean because with their terrible strategies. Now, obviously, I'm not for pollution in any way, shape, or form. No, um, they love to. They've had how many spills? There, a lot of the big government, along with the government funding, a lot of the big studies and research into green energy. ExxonMobil is a giant funder of most of those. That's just one of the big oil companies. So
And I mean that's I feel like that's something that they need to do. They've known about climate change and what oil and gas was doing to the environment. They've known that for a very long time. So
I really don't think they care.
no, but I also feel like they also realize that if they don't stay on top of the game, the industry is changing to green, and if they don't stay on top of it, they're going to get left behind, and that's not something you want to be doing at this time in the game. You know.
Nah, I understand that, but I
Now, don't get
just
me wrong; they'll still try to protect their oil as much as possible, but
yeah. So
they're
that
they're
you
they're
can't,
starting to start making that slight turn, or at least put that foot in the door. You know, like if I need to
or the foot
run
against,
in
or
this
to hold it
direction,
closed. But that's a whole other theory.
so
But so and it's the biggest thing with the Great Reset. The part that you want to talk about the economics, you want to talk about the environmental part. Those are all okay. We will have debates on those subjects because I mean I have my own personal thing where I do agree that we affect the climate, but I don't believe in climate change as the large as what it's claiming to be. I do think that there are effects from things, but not an overarching thing that cannot be explained by the Earth's just basic cycles of the Earth. Um, but the thing that weirds me out with this whole Great Reset is they talk so much about social change. They want to. When I say they, I'm referencing like what we're all getting on with foreign and foreign leaders and stuff, and we are also part of that. They talk about social change. Social change aspect is the one I'm very interested in because any human trying to fix other humans has always resulted in failure, and it will always result in failure. And so when we go to that and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to fix the world, and somehow we're all going to sing kumbaya, that doesn't work for me because I know who I am and I know who other people are. How can we even attempt to come close to singing kumbaya when we can't even agree to talk in public about God or talk about any of these issues, and even have like willing debates, like being new talk. If we disagree, we're gonna have a talk about it. You can't do that. You're scared to talk about anything in public, but somehow you're gonna make everyone sing "Kumbaya." The only way that that's gonna wind up happening is gonna wind up with authoritarianism, and obviously that doesn't work out well.
so what exact for our listeners? What exact social changes are you talking about that they're proposing?
They're talking a lot about social equality. A lot of the social equality that they're referencing is rooted in what's the name of that off the top of my head? I wish I would have remembered that. Um, give me 1 second. It's being taught in college and schools now. I don't know why my brain's messing up. I can't remember this. It's being taught in college schools. It's talking about race, class, and power structure. Um, it was critical. There's a critical theory. That's it. Critical theory. It talks about race, class, power structure. How everything is based off of some form of power. If you are in the majority, doesn't matter what race, ethnicity, anything, that whoever is in the majority has power. And anyone not in that majority does not have power, therefore they are the oppressed. So how do you equalize that? You have to take power away from one so that everyone is on the same level playing field. That does not work because you want to take everybody and try to put them on the same playing field. All that happens without fail is you're going to tear one group down that you feel is the oppressor and bring up another group that you feel is the oppressed and then tell them to work and sing kumbaya together. No, because then you're always going to have resentment on one side or the other. Doesn't matter who's on the top. You have to have equal opportunity is not always going to equal results, and we have to accept that because that's you can't have equal results and equal opportunity. You can't have it both ways. What they're talking about is having equal opportunity and equal results in critical theory, and that's another one. If you break critical theory down, it's based off of Marx's critical race theory, which obviously is nothing but is subvertive conflict theory. All of that
which
just
you've
doesn't
yeah.
work together.
Um, so I mean, obviously, regardless, people are gonna either try to suppress others or oppress the opposite side because they either gained power or lost power, and power corrupts people. Period.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That is true. Um, so what do we do as Christians? What are we supposed to be doing?
We need to wake up. We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten so much, and I want to read to to everyone Revelation 2 1 through 7. I believe that a lot of now this isn't everything, but I believe a nice portion of the church, this is what's going on right now. Revelation 2 1 through 7. To the angel of the church of Ephesus write, these are the words of him who the seven holds the seven stars in his right hand and walks among the golden lampstands. I know your deeds and your hard work and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked people, and that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and I have found them to be false. You have preserved and endured hardships for my name, and you have not grown weary. Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love that you had at first. Consider how far you've fallen. Repent and do the things that you did at first. But if you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. But you will have this in your favor. You hate the practices of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. This is what the Spirit says to the churches. Those to the one who is victorious, I will give them the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. What I think is going on right now, we have we're doing a lot of good things. The church in America, I'm referencing America right now for this. The church in America has very much done a lot of good deeds. We care for many people throughout the world. We have so many good programs. I was at church on Sunday, and they were talking about Convoy of Hope and what they do to help different places around the world. Great organization. Check them out if you haven't. Once again, Convoy of Hope. But there's a lot of different organizations, a lot of things that Christian Church has done, and the Christian Church has done in communities. In communities, I think we need to do a lot more, but that's a separate topic. But the church has gone pretty strong. But I think we've completely left out our first love because we know what we're supposed to do. We keep going, and we're great at routine. But like for you, Storm, you and I are both married. So when you first met your wife, and you were just married, you had this burning love, correct?
Why are you putting in past tense? I still have a burning love.
Okay, I guess let me. Let me just put it this way: you had this passion. Now the passion is always there, but as you grow in a relationship, what normally happens is the passion does one of two things. It grows, but it's not always going to be that same passion that was like that. The best way I could put it for most people is that lustful young passion. You turn into as you grow older. You don't you look at the person and you're with them for so long that you just appreciate more about them, and it's like a deeper love. And or you get to the point where you that's one way of doing it, or you get to the other point of you just exist and live with the person. You're like, yeah, this is what it is. I'm married. Okay, whatever. I think as America, we've gone to the second one. We said, we know we believe in God. We know this is what Jesus wants us to do. So we're going to go out and do the right thing. Okay, you lost your passion. You haven't grown at all. Because in the very beginning, well, for most relationships, you're young, you're reckless, and you're an idiot. That's every relationship. But as for Um, you're Once you get older, you get more wise. And for Christ, you're in the very beginning when you first accept Christ, you are one to scream and tell everybody about it. Sometimes you have the wrong timing, the wrong place. I've learned that the hard way for myself over the years. But then you learn to grow in wisdom and say, okay, this is where I know this is where God would want me to say something. You know God's heart. In the beginning, you're firing off willy nilly, but you're not exactly sure where it's going to land. I think that we're right now as Christians we're stuck with you know what, I'm okay with preaching, I'm okay with hearing the word, and I'll tell somebody I believe in God. But and then when you do, you're like, yeah, I go to church. Oh, you like it? Yeah, I've been going there for years. There's zero passion. There's zero fire. So how are we going to convince anyone that to need Christ when we can't even have a bit of burning desire in us, or even that age desire of like, I know this person so deeply because I've been with them for so long. We don't have either the burning newfound desire or the age desire. We just forgot. So, and one thing I think also is very reflective of us is it says here in the verse that you one thing I have for you that you hate the practices of the Nicolaitans. Taking out the Nicolaitans, you hate the practices of X. So you hate evil is what it's saying. As the church, for the most part we hate evil. I mean, we're beginning to get to the point where we're calling good evil and evil good, and that is a very scary path to go down that we need to run away from as a church. But we're hating those practices. We're showing what we hate, but we're not showing what we're for. When I say hate, I'm not saying the stupid like Westboro Baptists going out and being absolute idiots. Uh, Condemn them totally. They're just they need prayer. That's what they need. Uh, they drive me insane. Um, but we're good at what we disagree with. But what are we for? I just had a conversation with somebody today, and I was just explaining to them. They had some questions on different things with like reincarnations and stuff, and I just gave the gospel message, and the words to me was, "That's beautiful." Was I explained that God knows that we can't save ourselves. So he sent his son to save for us. He said, I'm going to suffer because I love you and I want to bring you back to me, even though you ran away. That's what we need to do. We need to talk about what we're for. Yes, be against what we're supposed to be against. But what are we for? And if we don't know what we're for, we're just going to just run into the wall and just, whatever. Yeah, I'm Christian. Why do I want to be anything like you then? If I can't even, if you don't care enough, why do I want to be like you? You have no passion or desire.
Yes. Not to mention, I mean, Christians are also very, and this is just a general term,
Mm-hmm.
judgmental. Um, why
Dave, you're
would
100% right. That's a very accurate term.
like why we're not supposed to be judging people, and yet
eh, let me,
we are not. That is all on God.
Actually, what Jesus said, Jesus said, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," and a lot of people cut it off there. What the next verse says is, "For in the same measure that which you judge, you will be judged." What he's talking about is you can judge, but you better be holding yourself to the same standard, because if you're not, then you're a hypocrite. Now, as for
Which
judging,
most of the Christian church, I would probably say, is our hypocrites.
yeah, that's why we once again need to reset. Bring that word back in. Let's reset back to Christ, as we've gone off and focused on ourselves way too much, and we have forgotten Christ in this. We
So go ahead.
And I say we want to go with all these great world plans, like the not WHO, sorry, with the World Economic Forum talking about this great thing to reset the world and fix all these inequalities. It ain't gonna work. Jesus is the only one who's gonna fix these equalities. Once you fix the heart, then everything else will follow. Now, man's heart is forever going to be running from God. So I think it's a literal exercise in futility to think that somehow you are going to take the world and magically wave a wand and reset a few things and try to do all these different practices and all that, and somehow think that that's going to fix the problems in this world. I
So
think
you're saying that we shouldn't put any effort into fixing the problems of this world.
I'm saying we need to put the effort into our hearts because what as, Paul talked about it. He says that you're not going to know my faith because of my actions. You're going to know my sorry. You're not going to know my faith. Is it my faith because of my actions? You're not going to know my actions. So be you're not going to know my faith because of my actions. My actions are going to be because of my faith. If I got that right, I think I might have misworded that. But what he's saying is, it's not because of what I do that makes me a Christian. It's what my heart is, and that's going to control my actions. I don't know where my heart is. So the problem, we want to fix the actions first and not fix the heart. If you don't fix the heart, the best you can get is this man-made falsity that is only going to last for ever so short a time until it blows up because without the heart, nothing else matters.
So if you were talking to a new believer, or even a veteran believer, what would you say? Like, give us a few steps on how to get to that point of resetting our hearts.
You have to be so self-aware as a Christian. You have to don't get your own pride out of there. Get your own idea that well, I'm a good person. No, understand that you suck, and that's why you need Jesus. And then say, okay, what did Jesus give me? Okay, he gave me this talent. Cool. How am I going to use it for him? Oh, he gave me this. Oh, I'm going to use it for him. Do it that way instead of coming at it like, oh, I'm a pretty good person. No. Have you ever lied? Okay, you're a liar. Have you ever cheated? Okay, you're a cheat. Have you ever stolen something even as a child? And guess what? You're a thief. No matter what, you're not going to be good enough. So to attempt to do it through your own is not working. Appreciate every little thing that Christ does for you. And once you walk in that knowledge of everything I do is because of him and for him, at that point, you're like, okay, now your heart's in the right place because you're everything is focused on Christ at that point. So now that you have that, you want to know what he has to say. Get in his word, learn, read, listen to sermons, read books about it, read, listen, talk to people who are experiencing Christ and who you are following. You can have people in your life who have been Christians for 30 years and like, yeah, I'm a Christian, and then what does their life do? Absolutely nothing. Then guess what? They're probably not the best example for you. Always try to be with people who are better so you can move up. You're not trying to always stay in the same place. You're never stopping. It's always movement. The second you stop, you get complacent, and then that's where you get to the point of church here. It says that you left your first love. Because if you stop putting effort into a relationship, well then the relationship's over. There's no effort there. There's no fire. If you don't put any fuel on the fire, it's going to die out. So to a new believer, I would say get in touch with the Word, get in touch with God, get close to Him, surround yourself with people who believe and who are going to lift you up. To an older believer, take what you know and apply it. And if you're not applying it, be self-aware of where you're falling off at, and ask God for help and ask others for help. Don't let your pride get in. Well, I've been a Christian for so long. I don't want to ask for help. No, we all suck. We all need help. There's no way that you're going to not need it. Everyone does. It doesn't matter how old you are. There's even with the with Paul, he was talking about how different people. And now, mind you, Paul wasn't older. He was a Christian. He was older, and then he was like, "Oh, well, this person encouraged me. This person." Everyone needs encouragement. We're not meant to be lone wolves, and we often think that that's the only way to do it.
To piggyback off of that, um, It's a pretty well known saying. Show me your five closest friends, and I'll show you where you are in 5 years.
Yep. Always shoot up. Yeah, if you,
Always try to position yourself to be around people who you would want to be, and show those characteristics that you're shooting for.
yep. Not saying now that don't associate with people who are not at that level yet. Not saying that at all. But you have to prioritize your investment. That's what it is. You're investing spiritually. So if you're with somebody who's not at the same place that you are, and or they're not even trying at all, that's okay. But you can't. That's can be your only source of like, oh, I need encouragement. I'm only going to go to this person. Well, you're going to an empty well expecting to get life giving water, and that's the only thing that Jesus is going to provide. So you can't get your thirst quenched from an empty well, and so you have to surround yourself with others. The Bible says, but don't forsake the fellowship of believers. So you can have all those friends, those acquaintances, whatever, no problem. But where are you getting your sustenance from? And not only with God, but also with we have a human need for relationship. Are you getting that real relationship only from somebody who cannot you cannot receive back? Not that you're doing it to receive back, but you're you're gonna if you just give, and you know that the other person is not going to be able to help you at all, you're going to wind up draining yourself and then wondering why you feel tired, why you feel mentally exhausted, because you never refilled. Jesus is the only one who can refill you, and he's going to be using other people who are also filled with Christ to fill you up. I don't know if that makes sense because it's more of a churchy way of putting it, but it's what it is.
Yeah, it's always hard to try to tell a non-Christian, non-churchy terms.
Yeah.
But to kind of give a perspective, and I mean this is technically used in the church as well, but I feel like it's a good analogy of cups overflowing. Like if your cup's empty, it needs to be filled by someone else, and usually you have people that do have their cups that are overflowing and spilling into other people. So
Yeah. So that's very true. So I guess that comes into what are we going to do? How do we fill up those cups? We talked about what to do. I would tell new and old believers, but here's some very basic things. This is specifically do if you do not know Christ. Here's a couple different things. Number one, it's going to give you the basic gospel right now. We left God when we sinned as a human race, and then we said, okay, we're doing our own thing. We were doomed from that point on because God demands perfection, and anything less, whether you cross God's line of perfection by an inch, by you stole a pencil, or a mile, you killed somebody, you crossed the line. No one can save themselves. But God said, you know what? I love you so much. I created you because I wanted you with me. So I'm going to send myself in the form of my son to die and be the sacrifice, be the person who intercedes for you, be your lawyer, and be able to get you off the hook. I'm going to do that for you. So he took that and he said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to suffer because I love you and I want you back. So I don't care how much I suffer. I want you back. He brought us back to him, and now he says, "But you have a way, but it's up to you to choose me. I love you so much that I'm not even going to force you. It's up to you." So that's the basic gospel. You have to make a choice for him. You can make a prayer, and that's fine. The Bible, Jesus never said to have a prayer, and that's what's going to have you save you. No, he said, "Follow me." So how do you follow him? My biggest recommendation, number one, the first five books in the New Testament are four books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those four books are going to show you Christ. Get into them. Read what Jesus actually said. You're going to be very surprised by a few things when you put them into terms of today. For example, of that, when Jesus said, "For he who has ears to hear, let him hear." That's like a pastor going on stage, preaching a whole sermon, said, "Well, if you're going to get it, you're going to get it," and walks away. That's nuts. No one talks like that because no one wants to feel like, well, you're disenfranchising these. No, Jesus said, if you're going to get it, you're going to get it. It's up to you. He was very blunt with how he said it, and that's why I love it. But so that's number one. Understand Jesus, understand what he has to say, and then I would say, go into Acts. Read the book of Acts. The book of Acts shows you what the church is supposed to be like, what it was like, and it's giving you the foundation of it. And then in the book of Romans, you're gonna get a little bored probably unless you're like a nerd like me and loves understanding theology because I love theology. Then you're gonna get into what the actual terms, definitions, what things mean. Because words without meaning are meaningless. You need to understand what these things that you believe mean. Those first books right there, that's going to set you up for understanding, then going into the whole rest of the word. And saying, I want to hear about this. I want to hear about that. And that's what's going to set you up for the future. Now, obviously, you need to work with people because when we try to interpret things ourselves, it's kind of like Lord of the Flies, and then we come up with some real weird stuff. That's why we need other people.
Also, good point to mention is let's make sure we're getting a good study Bible, or at least another book that can help you work through those books that you mentioned, Sam, to make sure that you actually kind of understand what's kind of happening in that time, to give you some more context clues.
Yes, yes, that that is very important to get the context at the time. For example of that, if you go into when Jesus taught, there's two ways you can do it. You think about it. When after Peter betrayed Jesus, Peter lied and said, "I don't know him." He denied knowing Jesus. Peter was his closest follower. He denied him 3 times, saying, "I don't know the man. I don't know the man." And he was cursing and said, "I don't know the man." So then Jesus, after he came back, he said, "Peter, do you love me? And feed my sheep." He did it 3 times. So you can interpret that in the basic English way of saying, well, he was kind of like giving him redemption for that, which I also believe is true. But if you also want to dig a little deeper in that, in the original Hebrew and Greek, he says, "Do you agape?" I think he said, "Do you agapeo me?" Uh, and then he's like, his dad is like, "Do you love me like God?" And he was responding that, "I love you like a brother." Until the third time is he's acknowledging the part that he's God. You wouldn't normally get that directly from the thing. You have to, from the basic English text, you have to dig a little deeper in that. That's the point. You're supposed to dig deeper. If you want to know your spouse, you're going to ask them questions about themselves. You want to learn. And we need to reset and come back to the point of having that desire for him, having that burning, like, I need to know this person because this person is the coolest thing in the world who created me. I go out and outside, look at stars, and I say, holy crap, it's infinite upon infinite, and somehow he cares about me. That's amazing. We got to the complacency point of like, yeah, whatever, it's okay, it's cool, yeah. We haven't moved past that to be like, you know what? I don't care. The fact that I understand it, I have to live in the knowledge of that and like the amazement of
It is quite amazing how big our universe is and how small we are. And when you even compound that with time and across time, like how many people have there been and all that, it is truly baffling just to try to wrap your mind around that. I think that'll be a fun series to do on just how big is our God, you know?
that.
Um,
You're gonna upset some evolutionists there.
we can deal with that when we get there.
I have no
Um,
problem with that at all.
but I mean, even not just necessarily doing the evolution, just looking at how our universe is, and just even on this planet, like if you think, okay, I'm one person out of 300, and these are just generic generalized terms, 350 million people in the United States. That's one in 300. Like that's a very small number. Now, when you go into the entire world, I'm 1 in 7 billion people. Like that's crazy to think just how small you are compared to everything else, and yet the heart, the Father's heart is for you. He desires you. Something so small and just a blip in time across Earth and all this. It's just crazy how much he truly loves us.
Yep. He's so much effort into the littlest details of us and also to the universe. But we were the ones who were given this ability to understand, the ability to have conversations, talk about it, be able to grow, learn. It's awesome. Now, back with the reset. We we want to reset this world to fix all the problems in the world, and we get caught up in that. We all get caught up in the politics of it. We all get caught up in the crazy things going on in this world. And when we get caught up in it, a lot of times we that's where our light burns out also, because our light's burning out because we're putting so much effort into one thing, we're missing the goal. In Matthew 25, it talks about the parable of the virgins. What it's talking about is there was a man who was supposed to come, and he had these women who were going to be these women who were going to be married to him. Mind you, the time and the context for this, it was a parable. It wasn't literal, but he has women who are going to get married to him. And he said, "Okay, when I come back, I'm going out and doing whatever." Does not explain what it was. When I come back, as I'm giving you these candles, as long as they're still lit, you can you're gonna come with me and then live in my house and everything's gonna be all hey happy hunky dory. But he left it up to them for the maintenance and the upkeep of the candle. You had it and it had the fire already burning. All they had to do was keep adding oil and make sure they were good. After a while, half of them were like, you know what, whatever. And then their candles were about to burn out. And then at that point in time, they said, then the guy came back home and they're like, hey, can we borrow some of your oil? Well, ours are about to go out. And they're like, no, we took care of ours. Yeah, it's on you. You had to do it. And then they were locked out. They never could get to the life they wanted to get to. I think for us as Christians, we want to get to this the world's better, get it fixing everything. Why don't we light the fire first? Light the fire and keep it burning by putting the right fuel in and not trying to burn it everywhere else first. I think if you want to talk about fixing the world and all these different things, I love getting into the politics of it. Absolutely love it. But I don't think that we're going to fix it through that. I think we need to understand that we can talk about the problems and how to fix things here on earth, but it's always going to come down to the heart. Unless we fix this heart issue first, everything else is irrelevant, and we're also never going to actually do any real good. We're going to do the simulated good, which and specifically with this there's this whole thing with the Great Reset. Unless everyone comes together to sing Kumbaya, the only way to make it happen is by force. And that's not going to end well. It never does throughout all of history. Whenever you try to force people to do things, I think once people come together under that understanding, but what the understanding is, you can go back and forth between many different things and what you want to call it. I think the number one is why don't we bring God back? And you know what? Well, we can't have God in school. We can do this. Okay, well, that I have no problem arguing with you on because I want God in every aspect of my life. Well, we can't have him in school because what if this person believes that? That's nice. I know what my God says, and I'm sorry, your God is wrong. That's all there is to it. And we have to be able to be strong and stand up in that, but also being loving at the same time.
Yeah, I just want to point out that loving part. I can't say enough of. making sure we're the loving part. Like you just have to love them. It's what our love is. How is was what separates us
Hmm.
from them. If you are just being judgmental and saying, "Oh, you're going to hell," blah 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 blah, like you're not gonna win that person over to Jesus. It's through your love that they will know that we are disciples of Jesus.
Let's take it back to the Jesus himself. What did he do when things happen? I love this example of it. Because a lot of times in this world right now, we don't want to call sin for what it is. We don't want to call things the Bible talks about like homosexuality. The thing about doesn't want to talk about the problem with just lust, the problem with anger, the problem with this strife in general. All these different things. We don't want to talk about it because well, I don't want to offend whatever. Here's what Jesus did: the woman at the well, who he was according to their time that he was not supposed to be talking to. That was not the right time, the right person, blah, blah, blah. You don't associate with them. What did he do? He said, okay. He talked to her. He said, and then she said, well, you're not supposed to be talking to me, whatever. And he's like, no, don't worry. You got living water right here. And then she said, well, and he said, why don't you go get your husband? No, I don't have a husband. He's like, no, you're right. You don't. He called her out on it. That woman, he called her out on it and then also was loving to her and offered himself to her. And now you also want to take it out with Jesus with the woman who they caught in adultery at that time. So, which is a crazy thought to me to break into somebody's house and only punish the woman. That was not what God originally intended, and then that got twisted up majorly. But they took her and said, "Well, here she's deserving of death. What did you say?" They wanted to attack Jesus. He bent down in the dirt and wrote. We don't know what he wrote. A lot of people love to assume this, and I personally love this theory that he was just writing down everybody else's sins. And then as they saw them written on the ground, they kind of like felt convicted and walked away. And then he looked and said, Woman, where's your accusers? There are none. Then go and sin no more. He's calling out what she did. He's no, what you're doing is sin. Stop it. But I love you. I can't support what you're doing, but I do love you. We have to get away from the fact that well you have to support you have to, no you don't have to support but you have to love you and for the people who are going to equate well if you're not supporting it you're not loving them no that's not right at all because then you're that takes all of our core beliefs and puts them on a hanger of what uh, uh, um, people's personal beliefs are at the point in time in public interest it doesn't work that way.
I want to point out a lot of times our families make us very angry at certain times, but we still love them. It's kind of that type of love of like, no matter what you do, still going to love you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, my youngest, I'm sorry, my oldest son, we, if he, he has something called RAD. He has a terrible upbringing with his birth mother. He's adopted, and that causes some very big friction at home. Different things. I always tell him, I am gonna be very ticked off at you. I'm being nice with my wording right now. This is not an unleashed episode. I can't go nuts. I'm gonna be upset with you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Sometimes I'm gonna be really upset with you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. We can disagree, but still love each other. So I think,
And
okay.
yeah, and I think that's the hardest part is like having to disagree but still love. But I feel like for someone who doesn't know necessarily how to do that, to kind of relate back to your family, where like from because for the most part, like no matter what, people do love their family members. They may not necessarily agree with them, or they may have some issues with them, but for the most part, like you do have, you do love them regardless of what they do.
Yeah,
So,
we just need to study how Jesus acted. Once we see more and more how he acted, I really think that our perspective changes, because a lot of times we know how we feel in the moment, and our feelings are irrelevant to Christ. What he said is what goes, and once we can get over that, I think we're going to be in such a better place. So I think that's where we'll wrap it up today. We'll wrap it up with we we need to look at the world and say, yep, we need some way to reset this world, because it's going to the crapper. But why don't we reset our hearts? Where is your heart for God? Where is your heart for others? Why don't we bring that back and try to take that heart and say, okay, I want to run to you. If you're in your relationship with God, and you're perfectly fine where it is, then reevaluate it, because you should never be fine where it is. You should always be pushing forward. I say, I want to get here. I want to get there. For me, I know I love the thought process and thinking things, but I see people with a different gift with healing and stuff. I fully believe God heals, and I've seen it happen. I have this mental block with me sometimes with believing that it could happen through me. I want to see it, and that's what one of my goals is. I want to move forward in that, like that walking in the spirit, so that like my hands are his hands and his hands healed.
hmm
That's something that I want to get to. That's one of my goals. And I think we all need to find the goals and move forward into how can I act more like Christ every day, and understand that that's going to bring people against you, because the same way how you can have that conversation and say, like we just talked about how we can disagree. If you tell somebody you disagree with them, they're automatically going to get mad at you, and you have to be prepared for them to lash out because they feel that they're being attacked. Only in the moments where you can respond in love and still care about them, that's what's going to change people's hearts. And it's probably not going to be overnight either. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of crap until you can get to that point.
yeah, you definitely have to a lot of times play the long game, and the long game could be a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But if you continually at it and continually pray for them and continually love on them,
Yep.
you're slowly chipping away, and God's slowly warming up their heart, and eventually, hopefully, they'll accept and love Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we go ahead and close this out?
Yeah. We'll give a quick example of that. There is a guy that I hope to get on the podcast soon as a guest. He knows who he is. Um, that before worked with him, this guy gave me anxiety, something fierce. One time I had a bit of a little mild panic attack because of him, because we did not get along well at all, to put it lightly. Now this guy has become a very good friend of mine, and he has completely turned his life around for Christ, and it's awesome. He's not perfect by any means, but he's definitely wanting to move forward, and it's awesome. But that took me having to be uncomfortable for a decent amount of time until God worked on his heart. So we have to be humble in ourselves to realize it's not about us; it's about him. So that's the last thing I want to say is put yourself second, put him first. So let's pray before we end out. And I just want to thank you guys for listening to us today. Any last
One
thoughts?
last
Yep,
one last thought. A yielded life yields life.
there you go. Now look at the word yield and take out the. I'm kidding. No, yes, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out. Very true.
So,
All
all
right.
right, let's go ahead
So,
and close this out in prayer.
all right. Lord, I just want to thank you, Lord, today for everyone who's listening, everyone who will listen. And Lord, I pray that we can focus on you and reset our hearts and our lives to you in everything we say and everything we do. You are the first, you're the last, the Alpha and Omega. Thank you, Lord. And I pray, Lord, for everyone who does hear, Lord, that you can just touch their lives and bless them beyond what they can understand. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you next week.